everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. Today, I'm actually with my father, Myles Spodak, and I dragged him over here, and he's like, "What am I doing here?" And I said, "Well, it's very rare that you can find a father-son that can actually go through a transition and wind up working together successfully. And when we have our summits and we have our masterminds, it's incredible how many dentists actually practice with family." So me being a third generation dentist and, dad working with grandpa for a very, very short amount of time, there's a unique perspective here. And I think it's valuable for all the listeners that actually have worked with their family, either for a day, a week, a year, a decade or more. And you and I have worked together since 1998. So that puts us at like 24 years. So, we're in rare air that we were able to successfully navigate it, but I don't want to misrepresent it was not always easy. And there was a dynamic of mom being in the practice too. So it's not just a father-son relationship, but a father-mother-son, and it's hard. So first of all, thanks for spending time with the listeners.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Have you ever listened to a podcast before of ours?
I might. Not sure. I don't think so.
Okay. You ever read my book before?
Yes.
Really? Come on, Dad.
No,
Don't bullshit me.
It's the first line I got to.
Did you read the entire book?
No.
Isn't that incredible? So it's so funny. And he's
I
never been to
I
a
don't
summit.
read very much.
Yeah, but you know how to read, don't you?
That's one of the few things I do now.
Okay, good. So it's kind of funny, my wife is similar to you. She's like, I don't need to read your book. I hear all your bullshit all the time. She always says that to me. So it's so funny. She won't show up to anything. She won't listen to any podcast or something. She's like, I hear your shit all the time. Anyway, so Dad, let's rewind back when Grandpa Harry. So how long? So you graduated dental school in 66?
66.
Okay, 66 from Temple.
Right.
And Grandpa's practicing, Harry Spodak's practicing in Brooklyn, New York.
Right. He started his practice in 1938.
He went to dental school.
At the University of Illinois.
Class of?
1938.
Okay, class of 38. So does he work with Grandma Ruth or no? Is he solo?
No, he worked pretty much by himself with one assistant.
Okay, and there was an office in the house, right?
Yeah, it was a very small office.
Okay, so you go right out of school and go right to him, right? Or did you go to the Army first?
No, in 1966, it was the middle of the Vietnam War, so I had to go into the service. I spent 2 years in the Army as a captain in the Army Dental Corps.
Okay, so right when you get out, do you go to Harry?
Yeah, 1968, we moved back to New York, and I worked with my dad for about a year.
A full year?
Yeah, but I knew that I wanted to have my own practice.
What reason? What was wrong with that one, or what was the deal?
I didn't want to live in the city. I wanted to live in the suburbs. And somebody had told me, just pick a place you want to live that you like, and then just open a practice.
Yeah, you've always said that. I like that, by the way. I mean, it's nice. You also said one thing that I remember you always telling me. If it has a Cadillac dealer or Mercedes dealer, you can do well there.
Yeah, well, I stole that line from a well-known dental lecturer, I think.
Okay, got it. Well, no, you don't have to admit stuff like that. You just take it as your own. I'm going to credit you with that.
I'm very honest.
But I know. I'm honest too, but I don't mind a little bullshit now and again. But one thing that's interesting is I was once giving a lecture out in Naples, Florida. And maybe it was not Naples, it was a surrounding community of Naples. It was an Invisalign lecture. And I met somebody in the audience, and they said, hey, where I practice, people can't afford Invisalign, blah, 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 blah. And I said, how far away from this hotel do you practice? They said, well, right, literally 2 miles. I'm like, well, there's a Mercedes-Benz dealership like 3 minutes away. Don't you think they have better demographics than we as dentists do? So obviously there's a need to support a Mercedes dealership, but I think it's a good little point for people. If you want to practice in a certain area, you love it, and it has a car dealership of those magnitudes or good Starbucks and good retail development, the demographics are probably there. And fortunately nowadays we have great demographic services that you can purchase to know what the areas, if the area is underserved or overserved, and the socioeconomic factors that can support the practice. But anyway, we digress. You go to work with Grandpa Harry. What was that like? Talk to me about that first year. I know you didn't want to be there, but how was your relationship with him working with him?
It was good. It was very good. It was, transitioning patients from his practice to me was a little tricky because I was a pretty young guy at the time. And a lot of the patients, were reluctant to see
Same
me.
like us. I
Yeah.
think same like us.
And I remember one story that was really, really interesting, that this patient had an emergency issue. And my father said, well, I can't see you, but my son is here. Give him a try, see how things work out. So I treated him. And after I treated him, he said to me, I really love your dad. But when he worked on me, it was like he was changing a tire in my mouth. so I felt really good about that I was able to transition one of his patients to me. And I worked with him for about a year, but the office was very, very small.
I'm sure.
I think it was probably like 400 square feet, which is tiny. It was
But it was in the house, right? It was one of those type of deals.
Yeah, it was in the house. It was two operatories, very cramped, a small waiting room, and not much else. And I just felt like I wanted to do something on my own.
Yeah.
I didn't want to live in New York City. I wanted to live in the suburbs.
Right.
So that's when I decided to open my own practice.
So a funny story, you reminding me of this. When we came together to work here, you were probably like, this is going back like 5 or 10 years ago. You're in your 70s at that point, and a patient saw you and said at the very end of the appointment, "Hey, doc, you were great, but I want to see your father next time." They thought you were so you're in your 70s, and they at the end
I remember that.
they're like, "You're awesome, but I want to see your dad." You're like, "My dad is like 100, would be 100. He's deceased. You're too young." So you leave dad, and there's no drama around that. Like,
No.
He was cool.
Well, he was a little disappointed. He had his intention was for me to take over his practice.
Got it.
So I really maybe foiled his plans, but I wanted to be out on my own.
Got it.
So
was it really about being out on your own, or being in the suburbs? Because you're kind of saying
it was more
interchangeably.
like being in the suburbs. I just didn't want to live.
Okay, so it wasn't this need to individuate, like, and do something totally different. It's just you couldn't see yourself living in the city.
Yeah, right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
That's a different distinction.
Yeah.
Because a lot of dentists don't want to fall into the shadow of their parents for other reasons. You just had a real practical issue. You couldn't see yourself practicing there.
Right. That's true.
That's a big distinction. So then you go out to New City.
Right.
And then how long were you there?
I opened the practice in New City in 1969, and at that time, my in-laws had moved to Florida, so we were going down to Florida for vacations.
Yeah,
and I never really had much exposure to Florida, other than when I was a kid. I mean, my parents used to go there; I used to go with them, but I never realized how nice Florida really was, especially in the wintertime. And I started the practice in 69. And in 1973, I took the Florida boards.
Yeah.
With the intention of just having the board, not really wanting to move at that point. I really was okay. I liked the house. I liked the neighborhood. I had a fairly good practice. And I didn't have any intention of moving. But I remember it was probably around Thanksgiving time, just about this time of year, in 1973 or 74, just after I had passed the Florida boards. And I remember it was starting to get dark about 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon. And the mamas and the papas were singing "All the Leaves Are Brown" and "The Sky is Gray." And I said, that's it. I'm moving to Florida.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, and then I moved to Florida.
But the cool thing is I'm not starting to interrupt the story, is like when you got here, like you didn't realize how unsuccessful, or maybe that's the wrong word to use, how much more successful you were.
Absolutely.
So the first year in this practice that you opened with Uncle Marshall and Delray, you did more crowns in 1 year than like your last 5 years or whatever.
True. The practice in New City was mostly kids. The average age of a person in New City was 16 years old. My practice was mostly a pediatric practice. I saw a lot of kids. So that was really tough. But, I did it because that was normal for the area. And, the parents would send the kids in, and they'd say, if my kid comes out alive, I'll come and see you. And that's
got it.
That's how I got the adults.
Okay, so let's fast forward all the way through. So you're busy, you're doing your thing, you got a great reputation, you're working here for basically 25 years. I'm in dental school, and I'm not sure if I want to go back to Florida at a certain point. I was kind of eyes wide open. I was really enjoying, I enjoyed Boston, and I had opportunities for me. And you're like, the whole time that I was in dental school, you kept saying to me, oh, I can't wait for you to get out. Can't wait for you to get out. I need help. I'm overwhelmed.
It was.
And then all of a sudden, like late 97, 98, and I'm about to come out, you give me a different tone. Like, I hope I'm busy enough for you. I'm like, what the?
Well, things started slowing down for some. I don't remember exactly what happened with the economy, but I was like very busy, extremely busy. I was seeing like 40 patients a day.
Yeah,
at one
all
point.
fee for service, never mess with any insurance.
No, never did. And I was probably the only provider in Delray that did not accept insurance.
Right.
I mean, I was dealing with patients who were very insurance driven, and I didn't, entertain doing any insurance dentistry.
Yeah.
And the practice just grew and grew, and it was.
So I joined you, and I'd say the first, like, I don't know, 8 years were really tough. The first, right out of the gate, it was really good. It was great to have you there, and it was you were really impressed with my education at Tufts. I remember you saying that, like how much I didn't do a GPR, I came right out. I joined the Seattle Study Club, and I started learning a lot, getting into FMR and stuff like that. And it was tough because the lack of technology, the appointment book, the way what really inspired me, actually, I don't know if I ever told you this, to become a dentist, was that when you had your old office, remember you did two different offices in the same building. The first office was really dated. It was very 70s. And then, like, somewhere when I was in college, you redid the office and you moved next door, in the same building. And that kind of like lit a spark in me, like, oh wait, dentistry could be totally different. Like, so I conflated dentistry and your Brady Bunch 1970s office as one, and then when you went to the new space, I was like, it lit a spark in me for what maybe dentistry could be totally different. You can, do anything you want. And when I came in, right at probably like year 3, 4, I was really anxious to do stuff. So I was probably like, 31, 32.
Yeah.
But, the mechanics of the practice, the mom and everybody there, we really didn't have an ability to relinquish the control to allow me to do it. I understand, like, it was very difficult because every time I would suggest doing something, it felt like a personal attack. Like, what do you mean we're not doing it? Like, it was like a personal attack on you and mom. Like, well, what do you mean we're not doing it right? I'm like, no, you're doing it right, but things are changing and there's technology and computers. And it was very, very difficult. And what I remember doing during that time was like, okay, I can't really advance my career because I'm kind of stagnant. I don't have the control that I would want. So I started doing like extracurricular activities. So I was working, we were done at 5 every day. I became a pilot, I was channeling all that energy into other things. I became a private pilot, flying all the time. And then it really kind of got up to a boiling point when I met Saisha. Because when I met Saisha, in 2005, my wife, I remember talking to her, and we were getting serious and talking about the future, and I found out what she makes per year. And when she told me what she made per year, it was like triple what I was making, and I got so insecure. I don't know if I ever told you that, but I was like super, super insecure. Because, like, like one of the things as a man, you want to be able to provide. And instantly I felt like outclassed. And that created a lot of angst. I was like saying, okay, I gotta do better. And frankly speaking, for better or for worse, there was no possible way for me to make more money in our practice. There was nothing I could do. So it was like I got to a point like where it's like, okay, either I'm going to go out and buy that practice in Miami or something, or but I knew I couldn't have, an opportunity that wasn't going to be able to be scalable. And I think through all that, we were, one of the things that happened from it, because it was a contentious time, there's fighting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of slamming doors, and even in the, because Tiffany was there sometimes, you could know we were arguing and stuff like that. Because it was a lot, I think, as the father, and I see this a lot. It's a very big thing when you let a child come in, because it means it's like it's an existential thing of like, okay, where's my relevance? What am I supposed to do? And we handled it, in hindsight, after all the contention, kind of the boiling point simmered down. It was a really beautiful thing. And I want to kind of distill down for the listener what it was. So on my end, Michael, my best friend Michael Denora, said to me, hey, Craig, your dad's, I don't know, at the time you were what, 65 or something,
Yeah.
right? 60 something.
In,
Like,
in 98? No,
no,
2006.
2006.
Yeah, 2006. Yeah, it's probably like, six. I was born in 41, so 66. Yeah, 66, 65.
So I
65.
remember him telling me this is like, hey, Craig, because you and Joe are the same age. By the way, happy early birthday.
Yeah,
Joe's birthday was
thank you.
yesterday. He called me up. He's like, Craig, you're fighting with your dad a lot, and our dads are at this age in their 60s where like one day you can pick up the phone, something catastrophic is happening. And he says, you don't want to fight with your father and get in a, and then have something happen. And you don't want to you don't want that on you. You don't want to ever have that level of discord with a family member, especially someone that's getting older. And I remember that it shifted from that. I'm like, I'm just not going to fight anymore. I just don't want, I mean, obviously we've argued and nothing's perfect, but I didn't want it to get to that level. And now looking back on it, like I look at our transition of like, I actually can see pretty clearly, that I bet you would agree, that if we didn't do this, or we didn't take it, that you probably would have disconnected. Like I think what we were able to do in hindsight was extend your career. I mean, look, you're here now.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to add value to the practice, and come and go as you please, and still add value and plug in. So the days you're here, it's great.
Yeah.
But you don't need to carry so much weight. I see a lot of dentists that partner with their family, and the dad wants to slow down, but there's no other way to replace the revenue. So it's hurting the practice. They're like cranking it down, and everybody's stressed out because dad doesn't want to really, dad or mom, one girl on my mastermind, her dad won't. Her dad wants to maintain the ability to practice 4 days a week, but what doesn't want, and then sometimes takes off months at a time. So she can't replace him to keep the revenue up. So it was cool that we were able to scale it and provide that. So there's no resentment. Like if you want to work 5 days, great, I love it because I love seeing you. But if you want to work 1 day a month, that's cool too. So we would not have been able to do that, I don't think.
No. I also came to the conclusion that you had some amazing ideas for your own practice and the things that you were trying to do to create something that was really special. And after a while, I realized that was a very good thing, and it was a very smart thing to do that. So
I don't think you thought it was good or smart at that time, though. I think you just said,
it evolved. It evolved.
I think you just kind of said, like, I've gotta. It was like more binary. You had to feel like you had to do something. I don't think at the time you're like, this is going to work out great. I think you're like, I'm going to let it go, and it could totally fuck up. I really do think you thought that. At least mom.
I didn't really. I had tremendous faith in your ability. I just felt that you were going to do well. I felt
really.
That, yeah, I did. I felt
that. I didn't have that.
I know. You didn't have. You may have not had the same feeling that I had, but I just felt that you had a great idea, a great perspective of what the practice could be, and eventually I just felt I'm going to let you run with it.
So let's go all the way forward. Let's fast forward like towards the next level. So it was in this office at this desk. Remember that day, right? So we build the building. I had this idea to build this massive building, 13,000 square feet, millions of dollars, 5-6 million, I can't remember. And I don't know if you know this part, but I probably didn't tell you this. But so the bank was sold during the process of the building being built. So it was a certain bank, and they got sold. And so when the building, I had a construction loan, and my payments were like $5,000 a month. But when you get certificate of occupancy, it converts from construction to permanent. So we got our CO in December. So in January, I'm expecting my first real payment. It's going to go from $5,000 to $35,000. Did you know this?
Yeah.
And so we're moving in December,
right?
And I know that I have a $35,000 mortgage payment, and I know I have like 60 in the bank, and payroll at that time was like 50. Did I tell you any of this? Oh yeah, this gets pretty bad. So I had a legal pad next to my bed at night, and I had a list of names like Michael and all these different people, half of them John, that I was going to borrow money from to keep it all afloat. And I didn't want to tell you this because I knew you'd be upset or scared, but I was pretty sure I was going to go broke and go out of business. So you didn't know this, but I'm in this room, and I always get emotional when I talk about it, so I won't get emotional now because I don't want everybody to hear this one. I think I'm over it now that I can process it. But I'm sitting there, and you're walking around the office, and you hear me crying. Remember?
Yes, I do.
Can you kind of go on with the rest of it?
We were standing in the hallway just outside your office, and you were like really, really scared. I could see it. And all I did was I gave you a hug, and I said, "You'll be fine. Everything will be fine. This was a great idea. It's going to be fine." I didn't know the details of what you just told me, and if I had known the details, I might have had a different conversation.
You're fucked, Greg. No,
but I had a feeling. I had a feeling.
Well, you were hugging me, and I was crying more. And you said to me, "I'll work for free." Remember you said that?
Yeah, would have been no problem.
You said, "I will produce and I'll work for free. We'll make this work." And then, because I remember the feeling going into it, like, why the hell did I do this? And then through that moment, I'm like, oh, I did it for us, for our legacy, as like a testament to like dentistry and all the stuff you created. And it was really a defining moment. And then the rest of the story, it gets pretty good here. So since the bank got sold, January 4th comes along and I don't get the bill. I get a $5,000 bill. Okay, that's interesting. I guess the paperwork hasn't been settled. Pay the $5,000 bill. So February comes along. I'm expecting 35 plus 35. They're going to hit me 70. I get a $5,000 bill. February comes along. I'm expecting now they're going to reconcile 105. And now I have like 90 in the bank. But I feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And they send me a $5,000 bill. And they keep doing that all the way through October. So I got, through the grace of God or an error or whatever, a $350,000 float. You didn't know this?
No, I don't.
In October, I finally called the bank because Michael said, "Don't call them. Let them, don't worry." In October, they finally catch up and they send me my first payment, $35,000 request. So I had paid $5,000 a month, and I should have been paying $35,000. So to be accurate, it's a $300,000 mistake in my favor, and that was the only space I needed to go from failure to success.
Wow, that's amazing.
Now you know I was crying.
I can see why. I would be crying. We both would have been crying.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of free work done.
That's right. Well, I had no reservations about doing that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So let's get down some takeaways because I know your time's limited. What are the things that you would? So I imagine there's going to be a lot of young dentists that are listening to this podcast, and they're going to tell their fathers that they're working with, to listen to this, and they're going to listen to you. And I want you to speak to the fathers of those dentists, male and female. What are the things that you can tell them in retrospect after working with your son for 25 years and you're got 50 some odd years of dentistry?
Yeah,
55 years of dentistry. What are like the top things you could tell those fathers?
Well,
they're contemplating having their children come in.
If you have a very motivated child that's in dentistry, I would encourage them to the fullest extent. And, trust your gut and go with it and let them take off. I mean, when patients would ask me how it felt to have, your son running the practice, I said, well, when Craig actually took over the practice, I felt like I was hanging onto the wing of a jet plane because things were moving so quickly.
Yeah.
Technology, computers, the treatment we were providing.
Yeah, they just stopped doing amalgam. Remember that? You were so, and then it wound up being great for you.
Yeah, I felt that was a good move. I thought that was good.
But like your production went up because you couldn't do those big old MOT. Everything had to become indirect to crowns.
Yeah, crowns.
Your personal production went up.
Yep, we had to do crowns instead of giant amalgams, which I was very accustomed to do. But, I had tremendous faith in Craig, and I just felt that it was going to go well. And the bottom line is just trust your gut and go with it. And, at some point in time, you got to just let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything you would have done differently?
No, actually, in retrospect, looking back at all these, the transition that we had, the difficult times, it was really well worth it, because at this point in my life, I probably would not have been able to work, because I couldn't really have a practice with the technology that we have here to make crowns in one day. And
Yeah, but you can't say that. You wouldn't know any different. So you'd be, like Marshall. Well, I won't mention his full name, but Marshall Dentistry. He has a very, traditional '70s practice, and he doesn't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, but patients demand more sophisticated services now.
But you would have slowed down, and your demand would have slowed down. So you would have had just a different career. One thing that I know about you is you're a social person. You love being around people, and all the people that you've met. All the team that you've interacted with, from Vanessa to like Sam Wagner. You trained Erica. Erica runs the whole place now. She started off as your assistant, and seeing the pride and joy of seeing her evolve. You have all these fingerprints. Vanessa became a dentist because of you. So I think it's like when we think about the patient care that we do, it's the relationships that bring us the most amount of fulfillment. And I do agree that the relationships have been expanded because of it. But people have left too. Some of your friends have left because they wanted the same. Some of our friends have not come. They don't come here anymore.
Yeah.
I know that always bothers you. It never bothers me.
It bothers me.
It shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think that if you try to be a practice for everyone, you're not going to win. You want to be, I went to that cardiologist you sent me to, and I walked in there. It was all, he's a great guy, don't get me wrong, but his technology, his office is falling apart. And like, damn. So everybody has a different, demand.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of demand for high-end dentistry today. I can see that.
Yeah, more than ever before.
Never believe it. The patients are demanding, even in England, which was basically socialized dental care, patients are demanding more sophisticated services, and they're paying for it.
Yeah.
Because the insurance will not cover it.
Yeah.
So dentistry has changed drastically in the last 50 years.
Better or worse today?
Much better.
Good for you.
Much better.
The best it's ever been?
Well, as of right now, when I went to dental school, we didn't have implants. Nobody did full mouth reconstruction. It wasn't really, you treated one tooth at a time.
What would you say to the dentist that tells their son and daughter, don't become a dentist?
No, that's a great injustice. I see that in medicine too. All the physicians that I know, not all of them, but most of them, tell their kids not to go into medicine.
And why would you be telling somebody that's possibly in college right now, thinking about dental school, why would you tell that person to go become a dentist? Why?
I think dentistry is an amazing profession. It's done well for me, and I think what you can do for patients is just over the top amazing.
Yeah.
Because I look at all these people who have facelifts and all kinds of plastic surgery, but nothing does the same thing as redoing their mouth.
Of course, I agree with that.
Beautiful teeth. I see people who have facelifts, and they're missing teeth, and they think that the facelift does it all, but it's really what you do to your teeth that makes it.
So you know what, Dan? I'm listening to you. You're speaking from an interesting place. You are speaking from a dentist that has done and watches a lot of full mouth reconstruction. So there's a lot of dentists that will spend their entire career and never do more than 2 or 3 crowns in a quadrant. So you have a unique perspective of dentistry, like I do. But like you've invested, you took, through experience and courses and work, and you were into photography way back in the 80s. You had that book of photos.
Yeah.
So if I can distill down your message, it's like invest in yourself, do bigger cases. You know what I mean? Like you always used to tell people, don't ever prejudge a patient.
Right.
People deserve to hear all their options.
Absolutely.
You never, and you'd always tell me that, and other doctors here, like, don't tell them about just the one tooth. Tell them about the whole thing.
Yeah, I once went to a lecture, and it was a pretty large group of dentists, and the speaker was talking to us about what dollar amount do you feel comfortable talking to patients about? Is it 10,000, 20,000, 50,000? And most of the dentists were very uncomfortable talking to patients about numbers when it got up in the higher ranges. And I never felt uncomfortable because everyone deserves to have the best. If they can't afford it, then we can,
Yeah, but we prejudge them.
Yeah, but you should never do that. Never. I
Yeah.
learned that very early on in my career, fortunately, and it taught me a lesson that I would never forget.
So funny enough, I had a podcast with another dentist. His name's Chris Ramsey. It was like a couple weeks ago. And, he was shocked that I asked the question, do you love your smile, to patients? And by the way, if they have a really ugly, crowded smile with broken teeth and they tell me I love my smile, I tell them me too. But if they say, no, I don't love my smile, I ask them why. And why and why. And well, if you had a magic wand, well, I'd get rid of all these ugly crowns. And he was like shocked I say that. He was shocked. I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's like you going into a bar and the bartender saying, like, do you like your shirt? I'm like, that's total bullshit. That's not the same.
No, it's not the same.
Not the same. It's incumbent upon us because we have the tools that they don't know we have. How many times have the patient over your career said, I had no idea you could do this? Or had I known, I would have done it sooner. Or, it's like you and Invisalign. How long was I on you for Invisalign?
A long time.
And then finally, don't you wish you did it sooner?
Yeah, I do.
And you're a dentist.
Yeah.
So I just think it's interesting that there's a dialogue out there that tells people that you should practice a certain way. And, at every dental office, and I have the privilege of going to so many, they're so different, Dad. They're so different.
I'm sure.
Each one is so different. But, I'm appreciative of all that I've learned from you. And there's a lot of people talk about privilege in life, but there's a lot of different privileges. Not to get political, but the greatest privilege a person could have is father privilege. When you have a man that you grew up in the house for a young man or a young woman that does the right thing, has high character, great work ethic, it just sets somebody up in life. And I think that's one thing that I'm gifted that you were able to do that for me. And it's if I'm proud of myself, it's because I had a dad like you.
Thank you. I'm proud of you as well.
I know you are. It's cool. And hopefully I'm doing that with Gavin. He tells me he wants to work in the practice.
Good for him. Good for him. Good dentistry is great.
He'll need like a CEO degree, not a dental degree, to take over my job. But anyway, I know you got to run home now, Mom, and do your thing. But just wanted to make sure that we had this podcast recorded because it's really common, and people are fighting, and it's a contentious time when the change of control.
I know it's not easy, but
it's not easy.
But I feel very good about what happened.
Yeah, and it wasn't all roses and sunshine. No. So don't beat yourselves up if you're currently fighting with your father or your mother or whatever. It's kind of normal, Yeah. I mean, I have independent children; they fight with me, so I kind of don't mind a fighter. You know what I mean? Because that means they're going to fight for other things.
Of course.
And if you got a passive one, maybe kick their ass a little bit too. All right, Dad. Well, thank you. Give me a hug.
Yeah.
Come take off your headset. I got to end this thing. Love you.
Love you too.
Thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, drop a like, drop a comment, or if you have a challenge with your father or your mother, let us know. I'll point my dad on the comments on YouTube, and he can add to it as well. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for listening. Thanks, Dad.